The mob boss ordered wine in old Creole French, expecting a poor waitress to lower her eyes and disappear. But when she answered back flawlessly, the room went silent, because that language belonged to a dead dynasty. In a rain-soaked New Orleans restaurant, Anna Blake was just trying to survive another shift. Cheap shoes, aching feet, a fake name on her chest, and a past buried so deep even she was afraid to touch it. Then Mason Cole walked in, a man powerful enough to make judges whisper and killers stand straighter. He meant to humiliate her. Instead, one sentence exposed a secret that could burn an empire. This story is about power betrayal, hidden bloodlines, and the dangerous moment a woman stops running from who she really is. Watch until the end like the video and comment where you're watching from. The sentence had left Anna Blake's mouth before fear could catch it. For 3 heartbeats, the whole restaurant held its breath. The Gilded Heron was built for people who knew how to pretend. Politicians pretended they did not see the men with guns under tailored coats. Judges pretended the envelopes passed beneath linen napkins were donations. Wives pretended their husbands were at charity dinners and not buying pieces of the city between the oysters and the wine. But nobody at Table 9 pretended now. Mason Cole sat beneath the gold light of the chandelier, his dark eyes fixed on Anna, as if the rest of the room had disappeared. The cruel amusement that had touched his mouth only seconds ago was gone. In its place was something colder, older, and far more dangerous. Recognition. Anna felt it like a hand closing around her throat. Her fingers tightened around the leather wine list. She could feel the sweat gathering beneath her collar, the cheap fabric of her uniform scratching her skin. The old language still burned on her tongue. She had spent years burying it, swallowing it, pretending she did not know the shape of those words. One insult from Mason Cole had dragged it out of her like blood from a reopened wound. Grant Mercer, the broad man beside Mason, had stopped smiling. His hand hovered near the inside of his jacket. The other men at the table had gone still in that particular way violent men went still before something broke. Mason leaned forward. "Who taught you that accent?" His voice was low enough that no one beyond the table could hear it, but Anna heard the steel inside it. She forced herself to lower her eyes. The old habit came back fast. Shrink, soften, become forgettable. Let men like him see only the apron, the tired face, the scuffed shoes. Let them believe they had already measured you and found nothing worth remembering. "My grandmother was from here," Anna said in English, letting her words bend into the plain, flat rhythm she had practiced for years. "She used to say things when she cooked. I must have picked some of it up." Mason did not move. That was not kitchen French. Anna gave a small nervous laugh. It sounded weak. Good. Weakness kept people alive. "I am sorry if I offended you, sir. I misunderstood. I will get the sommelier." Grant's eyes narrowed. "You misunderstood a dead dialect and corrected his wine." Anna's pulse hammered behind her ears. "I should not have spoken out of turn." She took one step back. Mason's gaze followed her. "Anna," he said. Her fake name from his mouth sounded like a threat. She stopped because running would have been worse. Mason looked at her name tag, then at her face, then at her hands. "What is your last name, Blake? From where Mobile?" "Mobile has changed." A waiter crossed behind her with a tray of champagne flutes, his face pale, his eyes fixed on the floor. The string quartet near the far wall kept playing, but even the music sounded careful now, as if the violin itself feared being too loud. Anna forced a swallow. "I have tables waiting, Mr. Cole." For the first time, his expression shifted. Not much, just a slight lift at the corner of his mouth. He knew she was afraid. Worse, he knew she was trained to hide it. "Go," Mason said. Anna did not wait for permission to be repeated. She turned and walked toward the kitchen at a pace that was almost calm. Almost. She felt every pair of eyes at table 9 on her back. She passed through the swinging doors and into the heat of the kitchen, where flames climbed from pans and cooks shouted over the clatter of plates. The noise should have helped. It did not. Her lungs locked. She gripped the edge of the stainless steel counter and bent forward, fighting the urge to be sick. Marcus, the junior waiter, glanced at her from the coffee station. "You okay?" Anna nodded too quickly. "Fine. You look like you saw a body." She looked up at him. Marcus went quiet. Anna pushed past him and reached the employee hallway. The walls were narrow, painted a tired cream color that had yellowed near the vents. Framed photographs of the restaurant's grand opening hung crooked beside the time clock. She ripped off her apron and shoved it into a laundry bin. Mr. Halbrook appeared from the office doorway, his face damp with panic. "What happened out there?" "Nothing. Mr. Cole is staring at the kitchen door like he wants to buy it just to burn it down." Anna reached for her coat hanging from a row of hooks. "I need to leave. You're in the middle of dinner service. I am sick. You were sick last month." "I am sick now." Halbrook lowered his voice. "Anna, listen to me. I do not know what you said to that man, and I do not want to know. But if Mason Cole asks for you again, I cannot tell him no." Anna froze with one arm inside her coat sleeve. That was the truth of the city. Men like Halbrook did not have to be corrupt to be obedient. Fear did the work of money. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment she almost felt sorry for him. Then, "Tell him I quit." Halbrook blinked. "You cannot just quit." Anna pulled the coat over her uniform. "I already did." She pushed through the back door into the alley. Rain struck her face at once. New Orleans smelled of wet brick river mud, spilled beer, and old flowers rotting sweetly in iron balconies. Somewhere down the block, a trumpet played a slow, lonely line that drifted through the rain like a memory that could not find its way home. Anna walked fast, not running. Running made people look. She cut through the alley behind the restaurant, past stacked crates and black trash bags shining beneath a security light. Her right hand stayed in her coat pocket, fingers wrapped around the small folding knife she kept there. It would not save her from Mason Cole, but it made her feel less naked. At the mouth of the alley, she paused. A black town car idled across the street. Too clean, too still. Her stomach tightened. She turned left instead of right, stepping into the crowd moving along Royal Street. Tourists laughed beneath umbrellas. A woman in a silver dress stumbled against her boyfriend. A drunk man shouted song lyrics at the rain. Anna slipped among them, head down, shoulders rounded, just another tired waitress going home. But every window reflected a ghost behind her. Every engine sounded like pursuit. By the time she reached the bus stop, her hands had stopped shaking. That was worse. Shaking meant panic. Stillness meant the old part of her had woken up. The bus carried her east through streets glazed with rain. She sat near the back, facing the aisle, watching every passenger who got on. An old woman with grocery bags, a teenage boy with headphones, a nurse in blue scrubs, a man in a saint's cap who smelled like cigarettes and did not look at her twice. Nobody followed. That meant nothing. The apartment was in Bywater above a pawn shop with a broken neon sign that buzzed all night and never fully lit. The landlord lived 2 neighborhoods away and preferred cash because cash did not ask questions. The stairwell smelled of bleach mildew and old cooking oil. A crack ran along the wall from the 2nd floor to the 3rd like a vein. Anna climbed the stairs without touching the railing. At her door, she stopped and listened. No movement inside, no breathing, no shift of weight on old floorboards. She unlocked the 1st bolt, then the 2nd, then the 3rd. She stepped in, closed the door softly behind her, and stood in darkness for a full minute before turning on the lamp. The apartment was small enough to understand in one glance. A narrow kitchen, a sagging couch, A round table with one chair, a mattress pushed against the far wall, curtains always drawn. No photographs, no plants, nothing fragile, nothing that could not be abandoned in less than 5 minutes. That had been the rule. Never own more than you could carry. Never love a place that could become a cage. Never sleep so deeply that a door opening would not wake you. Anna crossed to the sink and washed her hands, though they were not dirty. The water ran cold over her fingers. She stared at the drain until the old language stopped echoing in her head. It had not been the words that exposed her. It had been the pride. For years, she had trained herself to sound ordinary. She had learned the soft vowels of Alabama, the clipped replies of service workers, the polite apologies that meant nothing and saved everything. But when Mason Cole insulted her, he had not only insulted a waitress. He had reached into a grave and spit on the bones of a girl who had once stood beside chandeliers and watched men bow to her father. That girl had answered. Anna turned off the water. In the silence, she heard her father's voice. "Do not come back for ghosts, Evie. Become one." She closed her eyes. "Damn it," she whispered. Nobody in New Orleans knew that name. Not anymore. Not Evelyn Whitmore. Not the last daughter of Thomas Whitmore. Not the girl who had watched her family estate burn red against a Louisiana sky. She went to the window and moved the curtain a finger's width. The street below shone black with rain. A man walked a dog under an umbrella. 2 cars passed. The pawn shop sign flickered, painting the sidewalk in broken pink light. No black car, no men in suits. Still, the room felt smaller than it had that morning. Anna crossed to the kitchen table and pulled out the chair. She sat down slowly, as if her body had become old in the last hour. The table held a chipped mug, an unpaid power bill, and a paperback novel she had been pretending to read for 3 weeks. Normal things. Cheap things. Safe things. She touched the power bill. Anna Blake owed $87.42 to the electric company. Evelyn Whitmore had once inherited shipping contracts worth more than some banks. The difference would have been funny if it had not been so cruel. She stood. There was no more time for mourning the little life she had built. Fake lives were not meant to last. They were bridges. You crossed them and burned them behind you. She moved quickly now. From beneath the sink, she pulled a roll of cash wrapped in plastic. From inside the flour tin, a burner phone. From the lining of the couch, a key taped flat against the frame. She took the key to the bedroom and knelt beside the radiator. The floorboard beneath it looked ordinary. That had taken her 2 days to perfect when she first moved in. She worked her fingernail into the groove, then used the edge of a butter knife to lift it. The hollow below smelled of dust and metal. She pulled out a black canvas bag. Inside were the pieces of her emergency life. A passport under the name Rachel Moore. A driver's license from Tennessee. 2 bundles of cash. A small box of ammunition. A silver magnolia hairpin wrapped in a handkerchief. And a pistol that had once belonged to her father. Anna lifted the weapon with both hands. The metal was cold, familiar, heavy with more than weight. She remembered her father standing behind her at the private range behind the Whitmore estate, his hands over hers, his voice calm as cicadas screamed in the summer trees. "Breathe before you fire, Evie. Panic pulls the trigger. Discipline aims it." She checked the magazine, full. She set the pistol on the table and unwrapped the silver hairpin. The magnolia petals were tarnished but still beautiful. Her mother had worn it at breakfast at church, at summer parties when the women drank mint tea under white tents, and the men spoke in low voices near the roses. As a child, Evelyn thought the hairpin was magic, because her mother seemed untouchable when she wore it. Then came the night fire proved nobody was untouchable. Anna pressed the hairpin into her palm until the edges hurt. She was 13 when the Whitmore estate fell. The house had been alive with music that evening. Her father was hosting a private dinner for dock union leaders and 2 judges who never admitted to knowing him in daylight. Evelyn had been upstairs in a white nightgown, bored and angry because her father would not let her come down. Then she heard the first shot. Not thunder. She knew thunder. This was sharper, closer. Her bedroom door opened so hard it struck the wall. Her father entered without his jacket, blood on his shirt that was not his. "Evie," he said. That one word stole all the air from the room. He dragged her through the servants' passage behind the wardrobe. She remembered the heat of his hand around hers, the smell of smoke, the sound of men shouting downstairs in voices she did not recognize. At the greenhouse, he pushed aside a stone panel beneath the citrus shelves. The hidden drainage tunnel beyond was narrow, black, and wet. She cried then. Quietly, because Whitmores were not supposed to beg, but she was still a child. "Come with me," she whispered. Her father touched her face. His hand shook. That was the only time she ever saw it happen. "I cannot. Daddy, please." He took off his signet ring and pressed it into her hand. "If you live, they lose." Then he shoved her into the dark. The last thing she heard before crawling away through mud and roots was her father speaking old Creole French to the men who had come to kill him. The river remembers its own. Anna opened her eyes. The apartment returned. The lamp, the rain, the pistol on the table. She put the hairpin into the canvas bag. Then she changed clothes. The waitress uniform went into a trash bag along with the cheap name tag. She pulled on jeans, a black shirt, and a dark coat with deep pockets. She wiped the apartment down out of habit, though she knew professionals would find whatever they wanted. The point was not to erase herself completely. The point was to delay. She placed the burner phone on the table and powered it on. 3 numbers were saved. None had names. One belonged to a woman in Houston who made passports and never asked why. One belonged to a retired smuggler in Tampa who owed the Whitmore family an old debt. The last belonged to no one she had ever called. It was a number her father had made her memorize when she was 9. Emergency only, he had said. After the massacre, she called it once from a gas station outside Jackson. The line rang 7 times. Then a man answered and told her never to call again if she wanted to stay alive. She had obeyed. Tonight her thumb hovered over it. Then she heard something in the street. A car door closing. Not loud, not hurried. Controlled. Anna killed the lamp. Darkness folded around her. She moved to the window and looked through the thin gap in the curtain. A black Cadillac sat at the curb. Its headlights were off. The driver remained inside. Another man stood near the pawn shop entrance, coat collar raised against the rain. He looked like he belonged to no weather and no neighborhood. Anna stepped back. Mason had found her too quickly. No, she thought. Not found. Confirmed. The difference mattered. It meant he had already suspected enough to have men ready. Her mind moved through options. Fire escape. Alley. Roof access from the 4th floor. Bus station if the streets were clear. Train station if not. Airport was too obvious. Cash only. No calls after leaving. Cut hair at first safe motel. Burn the passport if anyone looked twice. She slid the pistol into the back of her waistband and pulled the coat over it. The burner phone buzzed as Anna flinched despite herself. Unknown number. The screen glowed in her palm. Do not take the train station. Her mouth went dry. A second message arrived. Do not take the bus either. She looked toward the window. The man below had not moved. A third message. They are already waiting where a frightened girl would run. Anna's hand tightened around the phone. She typed back with one thumb. Who is this? The answer came almost at once. Someone who knows your name is not Anna. A cold, clean rage rose inside her. She typed again. Come upstairs and say it. No response. Then came a knock at the door, 3 soft taps, polite, patient. The kind of knock made by a man who had never once wondered whether a door would open for him. Anna set the phone down. The apartment seemed to hold its breath around her. She crossed the room without sound. Her hand went behind her back and closed around the pistol. She drew it slowly, keeping the barrel angled down until she reached the door. Another knock. Miss Blake Mason Cole said from the hallway. His voice carried through the wood, smooth and calm. Anna placed her left hand on the first bolt. "You have the wrong apartment." "No," Mason said, "I do not." She unlocked the first bolt, the second. Her pulse did not race now. It settled, deep and slow. She unlocked the third. The door opened 6 inches with the chain still latched. Mason Cole stood beneath the weak hallway light rain darkening the shoulders of his black coat. He looked too expensive for the cracked walls and stained carpet, too composed for a man standing outside the home of someone pointing a gun at his heart. His eyes dropped to the chain. Then to her face. "Hello, Evelyn." The name struck harder than the insult at the restaurant. Anna lifted the pistol and aimed through the gap. "My name is Anna." Mason did not blink. "No." "Anna Blake is a dead woman's paperwork and a waitress uniform you wore because poverty made a useful disguise." The hallway light buzzed above them. Anna's voice came out soft. "You have 3 seconds to leave." Mason stepped closer until the barrel nearly touched his coat. "If I leave, the men who killed your family will reach this building before sunrise." Her finger tightened on the trigger. "You killed my family." For the first time, something like anger moved across his face. Not loud, not theatrical. A dark current beneath the surface. "If my family had killed yours, Evelyn, I would not be standing here offering you the truth." She laughed once without humor. "Truth from Mason Cole. That must be expensive. Everything real is." Behind him, the stairwell door creaked. Anna's eyes shifted for half a second. Mason noticed. So did the shadow at the far end of the hall. A man stepped into view near the stairwell, wide-shouldered scar across one cheek, one hand hidden beneath his jacket. Not one of Mason's men. Anna knew it before Mason moved. Mason slammed his palm against her door, breaking the chain. The door flew inward. Anna stumbled back, raising the gun. A shot cracked from the hallway. The bullet tore through the doorframe where her head had been. Mason caught her by the waist and drove her down behind the kitchen counter as another shot shattered the mirror above the couch. Glass rained across the floor. Anna twisted beneath him, furious. "Get off me. Stay down," I said. "Get off." Mason looked at her, his body shielding hers from the open doorway. "Shoot me after we survive the hallway." Another bullet punched through the wall. Anna stopped fighting. For one breath, they were inches apart on the floor of her dark apartment, rain ticking against the window, gun smoke drifting in from the hall. His hand braced near her shoulder, her pistol trapped between them. Mason's voice dropped. "Crawl to the back room." Anna stared at him. "I do not take orders from you." His eyes burned into hers. "Then take one from your father. Live first, hate later." That did it, not because she trusted him, because he had used the one language deeper than words. Survival. Anna rolled away from him and crawled toward the bedroom as Mason drew his gun and fired twice into the hallway. The shots were controlled, spaced like drum beats. A body hit the wall outside with a heavy sound. From the street below, tires screamed against wet pavement. Anna reached the bedroom window and shoved it open. Rain blew in cold against her face. The fire escape waited beyond slick and black. Mason came up behind her. "Move." This time she did. She climbed out into the rain with the canvas bag over one shoulder and the pistol in her hand. Mason followed close, his coat snapping in the wind. Below them, men shouted. Somebody fired from the alley. Anna ducked as sparks jumped from the metal railing. Mason grabbed her arm and pulled her down the fire escape steps. His grip was hard, but not careless. He moved like a man used to violence but not ruled by it. At the second-floor landing, Anna stopped. "My bag, you have it, not that one." Mason looked at her. "There's another." She pointed through the broken window of the apartment below where an old air unit rattled in the rain. "In there. Whatever it is, leave it. No." Something in her voice made him pause. Inside that lower apartment, hidden behind the abandoned air unit, was the last original Whitmore ledger. Names, roots, debts, old alliances. Her father's handwriting. The one thing she had never dared sell, burn, or send away. Mason cursed under his breath. Then he kicked in the window. They dropped into the vacant apartment as footsteps thundered in the alley below. Anna crossed the room, tore aside the air unit panel, and pulled free a flat oilcloth package sealed with tape. Mason saw the Whitmore crest stamped faintly into the leather beneath. His expression changed. "You kept the ledger." Anna shoved it into the canvas bag. "I kept my father." More shots from below. Mason took her hand and pulled her toward the rear stairwell. She almost objected to his touch, but another bullet snapped through the window and changed her priorities. They ran. Down the stairs. Through a rear door. Into the alley where rain fell hard enough to blur the world. A black Cadillac waited with its back door open. Eli Ward sat in the front passenger seat, pale and sharp-eyed, holding a tablet in one hand and a pistol in the other. Grant Mercer stood beside the rear door, firing into the darkness with terrifying calm. Anna stopped short. Grant looked at her. "You can shoot the boss later. Get in." Mason pushed her into the car and climbed after her. The door slammed. The Cadillac surged forward before she had found her balance, throwing her against the leather seat. Anna raised her pistol at Mason. He leaned back opposite her, breathing evenly, rainwater running from his hair to his collar. "You broke my door. You were being shot through it. You brought them. If I had brought them, Miss Whitmore, I would not have stood in front of you." The name filled the car. Eli glanced back once, then looked away as if he had seen a saint or a loaded bomb. Anna kept the gun steady. "Do not call me that." Mason's gaze lowered to the weapon, then returned to her face. "You answer to it. I answer to nothing from you." The Cadillac turned hard tires, hissing over wet pavement. Outside, New Orleans smeared past in streaks of gold, red, and black. Mason reached slowly into his coat. Anna's finger tightened. He paused. "Files," he said. "Use 2 fingers." A faint smile touched his mouth. "There she is. Do not." He removed a thin folder and tossed it onto the seat between them. It landed near her knee. Anna did not look down. Mason said, "Your father was betrayed." Her face gave nothing away. "My father was murdered." "Yes." "By the Cole family." "No." The word was quiet, but it struck the space between them with force. Anna wanted to laugh, to scream, to put a bullet in his polished shoe and make him bleed something honest. Instead, she picked up the folder with her free hand. The first page showed bank transfers, dates, offshore accounts, shell companies, port schedules, security codes from the Whitmore estate. Her eyes moved fast, trained by years of fear to recognize patterns before emotion could blur them. Then she saw the name, Samuel Reed. Her breath stopped. The car seemed to vanish around her. Samuel Reed had smelled like pipe tobacco and orange peel. He had brought her books from New York and called her Little Magnolia. He had sat across from her father at Sunday dinners and argued about baseball. He had taught her to waltz on the gallery while her mother laughed from the stairs. Her godfather, her father's advisor, family in every way except blood. Anna looked up slowly. Mason watched her with an expression she could not read. "No," she said. Mason did not soften the blow. He sold the codes. No, he opened the east gate. No, He moved the guards away from the greenhouse tunnel 3 hours before the attack. Anna's hand trembled. She hated that he saw it. Mason continued each word controlled. Victor Hale paid him through 3 companies tied to Atlanta port interests. Reed took control of what remained after your father died. Hale got the shipping lanes. My family got the blame. Anna stared at the papers. The rain beat against the roof of the car like fingers on a coffin lid. You expect me to believe this because you printed it nicely, no. Good. I expect you to believe it because deep down you already knew someone inside had to open the gate. Silence. The words found the place she had never allowed herself to touch. The Whitmore estate had been a fortress. Guards, cameras, private roads, dogs, codes changed every week. No outside crew could have entered that cleanly without help. She had known. A child knows the shape of betrayal even before she knows its name. Anna lowered the gun an inch. Not because she trusted Mason, because the folder had become heavier than the weapon. Mason looked toward the rain-streaked window. For 12 years, Samuel Reed has lived in your father's house. Anna's eyes lifted. What? He restored the West Wing. Kept the library. Changed the locks. Calls it the Reed estate now. Something inside her went very still. The apartment, the fake names, the hungry nights, the years spent lowering her eyes while strangers snapped their fingers for service, all of it narrowed into one white point of rage. Samuel had not only survived, he had moved into her grave. Anna folded the papers with careful hands and placed them back into the folder. Then she pointed the gun at Mason again. His brow lifted slightly. You still want to shoot me? Yes, because I showed you the truth. Because you want something. Mason's silence was his answer. Anna laughed softly. There it is. He did not deny it. I need the Whitmore name alive, and I need what your mercy know. You need men-money-proof protection and a room full of old families forced to admit you are not a ghost. I have survived without you. Mason leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on hers. You have hidden without me. That is not the same thing. The words cut because they were true. Anna looked out the window as the Cadillac left the bright streets of the quarter behind. The city changed around them. Tourist lights gave way to warehouses, then dark stretches of road where oak trees leaned over the pavement like old witnesses. Her reflection stared back from the glass. Anna Blake looked tired. Evelyn Whitmore looked furious. Mason spoke again, softer this time. I am not asking you to forgive me. I never planned to. I am asking you to live long enough to hear the rest. Anna turned back to him. And if I say no, his eyes did not move from hers. Then I put you on a plane with enough cash to disappear better than you did the first time. That sounds generous. It is not. It is practical. Why? Because if Hale finds you before you understand what you are, he will kill you and bury the last truth with your body. Anna's grip tightened on the gun. And if I come with you, Mason's voice lowered, then you stop being Anna Blake tonight. The Cadillac slowed before a pair of iron gates hidden between cypress trees. Security lights swept across the car. Armed men stood beneath the rain without umbrellas. Beyond the gates, a long driveway curved through black water and moss-draped branches toward a house of stone, glass, and shadow. Anna stared at it. A fortress pretending to be a home. The gates opened. The car rolled forward. Mason sat across from her, silent, now letting the house speak for him. Power did not always shout. Sometimes it waited behind walls, paid every guard on time, and knew exactly which road a frightened girl would take before she took it. The Cadillac stopped under a covered entrance. Grant opened the door. Rain hissed beyond the roofline. Anna did not move. Mason stepped out first, then turned back to her. No hand offered, no command, just space. That unsettled her more than force would have. Anna slid the folder into her bag and stepped out with the pistol still in her hand. The cold air touched her face. Mason looked at the weapon. "You planning to carry that through my front door?" Anna met his eyes. Yes. A beat passed. Then Mason nodded once. "Try not to shoot the staff." For the first time that night, something almost like a smile moved across Anna's face. It vanished quickly. She walked past him into the house. The foyer rose above her in dark marble and warm light. A staircase curved along the far wall. Paintings watched from gilded frames. Somewhere deeper inside, a clock ticked with slow authority. Anna stopped beneath the chandelier. For a second, the house blurred into another house. White marble. Lemon trees beyond open doors. Her mother laughing. Her father calling her name. Then smoke. Then screaming. Mason stepped in behind her but did not touch her. Anna turned the pistol hanging at her side. "You get one conversation," she said. His face remained unreadable. "Then we should not waste it." She looked toward the rain darkening the windows, then back at the man who had found her. Saved her, used her name, and torn open the grave she had spent 12 years sleeping inside. "Start with Samuel Reed," she said. And after that, Anna's eyes hardened. "Then you tell me why every man who wanted my family dead is suddenly afraid that I am breathing." Mason Cole led her through a hallway lined with portraits of men who looked like they had never asked permission from anyone in their lives. Anna, or Evelyn, or whatever name still had the right to live inside her, followed 3 steps behind him with her father's pistol in her hand. She noticed everything. The guards at the front door, the camera tucked into the carved molding, the reinforced glass behind the velvet curtains, the way Grant Mercer disappeared into a side corridor without being told, the way Eli Ward stayed close enough to hear but far enough not to interrupt. This was not a home. This was a kingdom with furniture. Mason opened a pair of dark wooden doors and stepped into a study that smelled of leather rain and old smoke. A fire burned low in the marble hearth. The room faced the cypress trees beyond the house, their branches moving in the storm like hands dragging across the windows. Anna stopped at the threshold. Mason turned. "You can come in with the gun," he said. "Or you can stand there and pretend the doorway makes you safer." She walked in. "Do you always speak like a man begging to be shot? Only when the person holding the gun has good reason." That answer irritated her because it was honest. He crossed to the desk and poured water into 2 crystal glasses. He did not offer bourbon. Maybe he understood that alcohol would insult the moment. Maybe he simply never wasted good liquor on a woman deciding whether to kill him. He set 1 glass at the edge of the desk. Anna ignored it. "Samuel Reed," she said. Mason opened a drawer and removed a black folder thicker than the one in the car. He placed it on the desk, then slid it toward her. Anna did not reach for it. "You talk first." Mason leaned one hand against the desk. "Your father trusted Samuel Reed with the East Gate codes, the port ledgers, and the private routes used by Whitmore crews between Baton Rouge and the Gulf. Reed knew which guards had families. He knew who could be bought. He knew which cameras failed in bad weather. He knew your mother kept the family jewelry in the upstairs safe during dinner parties because she hated wearing diamonds before dessert." Anna's face did not change, but the pistol lowered a fraction. Mason saw it. He gave all of that to Victor Hale. Why? Because Hale promised him the docks. Samuel already had power. No, Mason said. He stood beside power. Men like Reed mistake proximity for ownership. After enough years holding another man's coat, they begin to believe the coat fits them. Anna looked toward the fire. The flames bent and snapped around the logs. For one moment she saw another fire, a white house burning behind magnolia trees. Orange light against her father's signet ring. Smoke slipping into the drainage tunnel while she crawled through mud with blood on her knees. She had spent 12 years imagining Mason Cole's family as monsters. It was cleaner that way. Hatred needed a shape, and the Cole name had been carved into hers by every rumor that survived the massacre. You said Hale wanted the shipping lanes, she said. He wanted more than that. He wanted the Gulf without the Whitmores standing in front of him. Your father had old loyalty, not just money. Men followed Thomas Whitmore because their fathers had followed his father. That kind of respect cannot be purchased quickly. Hale needed the bloodline erased. Anna looked back at him. And your family. My father was expanding too fast. Hale used the massacre to turn everyone against us. He made it look like the Coles ordered it, then watched the old families punish us while he moved into your territory. You expect me to believe your father was innocent? Mason's jaw tightened. My father was many things. Innocent was rarely one of them. But he did not kill children in their beds, and he did not burn women in their own home. The room went quiet. Anna's grip hardened around the pistol. Careful. Mason did not apologize. You asked for the truth. My mother was not a detail. No, he said. She was the reason half the city mourned behind locked doors. I know what she was. You knew her. I met her twice. Anna stared at him. Mason's gaze shifted to the fire, and for the first time since the restaurant he looked less like a king and more like a man, remembering something he did not often allow near the surface. I was 19. My father sent me to Baton Rouge with a message for Thomas Whitmore. I thought I was important because I carried a sealed envelope and a gun I had never fired at a man. Your mother found me waiting in the garden and told me I looked too young to be that angry. A faint ache moved through Anna's chest. That sounded like her. What did you say I told her anger kept people from stepping on you? And she said, flowers grow through stone without hating the stone. Anna looked away first. Mason gave her that memory like a blade handle turned toward her sharp end held in his own palm. She hated him a little for it. She hated that he had a piece of her mother she did not. Eli appeared in the doorway. Boss? Mason did not turn. Not now. It cannot wait. Mason's expression cooled. The man from the memory vanished. Speak. Eli looked at Anna, then back at Mason. We checked the bodies from Bywater. 2 belonged to Hale's crew, 1 was local. Not hired muscle. Works security at the Orleans Parish Courthouse. Mason's eyes darkened. Anna caught the change. What does that mean? Eli answered before Mason could. It means Victor Hale was not the only person looking for you tonight. Anna felt the walls tighten around her. Who else? Mason took the tablet from Eli and studied the screen. Someone with access to sealed identity searches. Someone who saw our inquiry into Anna Blake and moved fast. Anna laughed once, a sharp sound without humor. So, your investigation exposed me. Mason looked at her. Yes. The blunt admission hit harder than denial would have. Anna lifted the gun again. You led them to me. I found smoke in the walls. Hale brought the fire. That is not an answer. No, it is the difference between guilt and responsibility. I am responsible for moving too loudly. I am not guilty of sending killers to your door. You think that matters to you tonight? No. To the war we are standing in, yes. She wanted to hate the calm in him, wanted to mistake it for arrogance. But there was no performance in his face now. He knew he had made a mistake. He simply did not collapse under the weight of it. That kind of control was dangerous. So was the fact that she understood it. Eli placed a small plastic evidence bag on the desk. Inside was a phone taken from one of the dead men. Last message came from an encrypted source, Eli said. Only 2 words. Mason read the screen. Then he turned it toward Anna. Bring her. Anna's throat tightened. Not kill her. Bring her. Victor Hale did not want her dead yet. That was worse. Mason set the phone down. He needs you alive long enough to control the story. Anna stared at the words. He will call me an imposter. He will try. Samuel will help him. Yes. She swallowed. The name hurt each time. Samuel. Uncle Samuel. The man who had tied her skates at the winter rink. The man who had whispered, "Be Bre's little Magnolia," when her mother's funeral dress arrived for a cousin years before anyone knew how much death was coming for their own house. A sob rose in her chest, sudden and humiliating. She crushed it before it reached her mouth. Mason saw that too. Of course he did. Leave, she said. Eli disappeared at once. Grant, who had entered silently at some point behind him, followed after a long look at Mason. The doors closed. Anna and Mason were alone with the fire. She put the pistol on the desk because if she held it much longer, grief might aim for her. Did he know I was home, she asked. Mason did not pretend not to understand. Reed, Anna nodded. Mason was silent long enough for the truth to arrive before the words. We do not know. She closed her eyes. Do not protect me. I am not. Then say what you think. Mason's voice lowered. I think he believed you were away at school. I think he sold the house, the codes, the ledgers, and your father's life. I think he told himself you would survive because cowards always need one clean corner in the room where they can stand. Anna opened her eyes. But I was home. Yes. So he did not plan to kill me. He just did not care enough to make sure I lived. Mason said nothing. There was mercy in his silence, and she hated that too. Anna picked up the water at last and drank. Her hand was steady now. Empty things often were. What do you want from me? The truth, I am tired of anything else. I want you to stand in front of every family that turned on mine and prove you are Evelyn Whitmore. Why? Because if you are alive, Samuel Reed is not a successor. He is a thief. Victor Hale is not a conqueror. He is a butcher. And the Cole family is not guilty of the crime that broke the Gulf. Anna set the glass down. And after I do that, you reclaim what belongs to you. And you reclaim what belongs to you. Yes. At least you are honest about using me. Mason stepped closer, stopping on the other side of the desk. I have known many men who dressed greed up as rescue. I will not insult you that way. You think that makes you better? No. It makes me useful. Anna studied him in the firelight. Mason Cole was not handsome in a gentle way. There was no softness in the line of his jaw, no warmth offered freely in his eyes. His beauty was architectural severe, built from restraint and threat. A man like him did not ask the world to love him. He demanded that it move, and yet he had stepped in front of bullets in her apartment. That did not make him good. It made him complicated. She did not have room for complicated. I do not trust you, she said. You would be a fool if you did. Then why am I here? Because you are not a fool. The answer landed between them quiet and infuriating. From somewhere beyond the study walls came the low murmur of men, speaking phones, ringing doors, opening and closing. Mason's machine was awake now. Her existence had turned gears across the city. People would be calling judges, bribing clerks, cleaning bodies, checking roads, watching airports. A life she had spent years keeping small had suddenly become the center of a storm. Anna walked to the window. Beyond the glass, rain silvered the cypress branches. The estate grounds stretched into darkness. Somewhere out there, men with rifles stood in the trees to keep other men with rifles away. Where is Samuel now? She asked. Baton Rouge, in your father's house. The answer cut fresh. Anna pressed her palm to the cold glass. Does he sleep in my father's room? Yes. Does he use the dining room? Yes, my mother's garden. Mason's reflection watched her from behind. He had it redesigned. For a moment there was no air in the room. Her mother's garden had been wild on purpose. White roses, magnolias, lavender, citrus trees, herbs that spilled over stone paths because her mother said beautiful things should not look too obedient. Evelyn had hidden there as a girl with books she was not supposed to read. Redesigned. The word felt like another murder. Anna turned back. I want to see the proof. Mason opened the black folder and spread the contents across the desk. Photographs. Deeds. Transfer records. Letters. Receipts from restoration companies. A picture of Samuel Reed standing beneath the Whitmore front balcony with a glass of champagne in his hand. Anna picked up the photograph. Samuel had aged. His hair was silver now, his face fuller. Wealth had softened him. That insulted her more than if he had looked haunted. He looks comfortable, she said. Thieves often do once they convince themselves the owner is dead. Anna tore the photo in half, then in half again. Mason watched, saying nothing. When she finished, she placed the pieces neatly on the desk. What is your plan? First, verify you in ways Hale cannot dismiss. My face is not enough. Not after 12 years. My language, powerful but not enough. My father's ledger. Mason's eyes sharpened. That helps. Anna touched the canvas bag at her feet. You knew about it. I hoped you wanted the ledger more than you wanted me. No. She gave him a look. Mason corrected himself. At first, maybe. That should have angered her. Instead, the honesty almost made her smile. Almost. What else? There are people still alive who knew you. Servants, dock bosses, old family allies. Most scattered after the massacre. Some went quiet. Some bent the knee to read because they thought the Whitmore line was ash. And you know where they are, Eli does. You have been preparing for this. I have been preparing for the truth for 12 years. I did not know the truth would walk into a restaurant wearing a crooked name tag. The line should have sounded cruel. It did not. Anna looked down at her hands. Her nails were short. One cuticle torn from work. A faint burn marked her wrist from a coffee pot. Anna Blake's hands. Not Evelyn Whitmore's, but whose hands had crawled through that tunnel, whose hands had loaded the pistol tonight, whose hands had kept the ledger safe. Maybe the dead girl and the waitress had not been enemies. Maybe one had carried the other until the world was ready to fear them both. A knock sounded. Mason opened the door before Anna could reach for the gun. Grant stood outside. We have the perimeter locked. Hale's men are gone. Police chatter says the Bywater scene is being written as a gang dispute. Good. Grant's eyes shifted to Anna. She needs to move rooms. Anna bristled. She can hear you. Grant did not blink. The room she is in has 3 exterior angles and too much glass. Mason looked at her. He is right. I am not sleeping. No one asked you to. Mason stepped aside. We have a safer room downstairs. Anna picked up the pistol in the canvas bag. I choose where I sit. Fine. I keep my weapon. Fine. I want the ledger copied in front of me. No one touches the original without my permission. Mason's gaze held hers. Fine. Grant looked between them unimpressed. Anything else before we redesign the entire house around her temper? Anna turned to him. Yes, stop bleeding on the floor. Grant glanced down. Blood darkened his sleeve near the shoulder. Huh. He seemed mildly annoyed as if the wound were a scheduling issue. Anna stepped closer before thinking better of it. You were hit grazed. You stood in the alley. That was the job. The simplicity of it unsettled her. In her old life, Loyalty had spoken with polished manners and family nicknames. Tonight, Loyalty wore a scarred face and bled without complaint outside a car door. Mason saw the thought pass through her eyes. "Come," he said. They moved through the house down a back staircase and into a lower level built like a bunker beneath luxury. The walls were stone. The doors were steel hidden behind wood veneer. Screens glowed inside a security room where men tracked maps of the city and camera feeds from the estate grounds. Anna watched her fake life vanish in real time. On one screen, police lights flashed outside her apartment building. On another, a still image showed the dead man from the stairwell. Eli was already pulling records, names, debts, affiliations. Mason's world did not panic. It processed. In a secure sitting room with no windows, Anna placed the Whitmore ledger on a table. Eli brought a scanner. He looked at her for permission before opening the cover. That small courtesy did more to steady her than comfort would have. She nodded. The first page appeared beneath the light. Her father's handwriting filled the paper. Strong. Slanted. Alive. Anna had not cried when bullets broke her windows. She had not cried when Mason said Samuel sold the gates. But the sight of Thomas Whitmore's ink nearly undid her. She turned away. Mason stood near the door, giving orders in a low voice to Grant. When he saw her face, he stopped speaking. Anna hated that he noticed everything. She recovered quickly. "What happens when Hale learns I am here? He already knows you left with me. Then he will move against you. He has wanted to move against me for years." And I gave him the excuse. Mason walked closer. "No, you gave him fear." She looked at him. "That is better. Fear makes men careless. Or cruel, usually both." The scanner hummed softly. Page after page of the Whitmore past appeared on the screen. Names of captains, dock foremen, judges, debts owed, debts forgiven, a map of power written by a dead man and guarded by a girl who had pretended not to exist. Anna sat down slowly. Mason took the chair across from her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, she said, "When I was 13, I thought if I stayed hidden long enough, the pain would get bored and leave." Mason's face did not soften, but his voice did. Did it know? It learned my schedule. Something moved in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Not pity. Pity would have made her leave the room. He leaned back. "My father died with men spitting your family's name at him." Anna looked up. "How heart attack in a federal holding cell. He was awaiting trial for your family's murder. Charges built on witnesses Hale paid and evidence Reed planted." She absorbed that. "You hated us." "I hated the dead because it was easier than admitting the living had beaten us." The confession sat between them, ugly and real. Anna understood that too. For years, she had hated Mason Cole because it kept her from drowning in questions. "Did you believe it?" she asked, "that we killed your family?" "Yes." Mason looked toward the steel door. "When I was younger, yes. My father never explained himself. He believed explanations were debts. After he died, I started digging because guilt should have left a cleaner trail. It did not. It led to Hale, then Reed, then nothing. Until me. Until you insulted my wine." A breath of laughter escaped her before she could stop it. Small. Broken. Real. Mason looked at her as if the sound surprised him more than gunfire. Anna immediately hardened her face. "Do not look pleased. I would not dare. You are doing it quietly. That is my specialty." The room shifted by 1 degree. Not safe. Never safe. But less frozen. Eli cleared his throat from the scanner table. "Miss Whitmore?" Anna flinched at the name, then forced herself not to. "Yes. You should see this." She stood. Mason rose with her. Eli pointed to a page near the back of the ledger. It was dated 2 weeks before the massacre. A note in her father's hand. "If Samuel presses again for Atlanta access, refuse him in front of witnesses. He is afraid of poverty, which makes him vulnerable." Watch Hale. Watch the East Gate. Anna read it twice, then a third time. Her father had known. Not enough to save himself, but enough to leave a warning. Her fingers touched the paper. Mason stood close beside her, his shoulder almost brushing hers. He suspected Reed Mason said. Anna's voice came out distant, and still let him sit at our table. Your father believed loyalty could be repaired. Anna looked at Samuel's name. Then he was wrong. Mason said nothing. The old version of Evelyn might have argued, might have defended Mercy because her mother would have, might have searched for the wounded human part of Samuel Reed and begged it to explain itself. But Anna Blake had scrubbed wine from carpets while rich men laughed at her shoes. Anna Blake had slept with a gun beneath a pillow and left apartments without saying goodbye. Anna Blake knew some stains did not wash out. She closed the ledger. I want Reed alive when I see him. Mason studied her. For confession, for recognition. His eyes narrowed slightly. Anna looked at him fully. I want him to know exactly who came back. A slow, dark understanding passed across Mason's face. Then we do this your way. No, she said. He waited. We do it the right way. Mine if it works. Yours if it has to. This time, Mason did smile. Not warmly, proudly, as if the weapon he had suspected was finally showing its edge. Anna did not know whether that should frighten her. It did. It also steadied her. The storm outside began to fade near dawn. Rain softened against the roof. Somewhere in the house a guard laughed under his breath, then went silent. The world had not ended. That felt obscene. Eli finished scanning the ledger and returned it to Anna with both hands. She placed it back in the canvas bag and stood. Mason watched her. There is a room prepared. You can lock it from the inside. I said, I am not sleeping. You also said you wanted the truth. You have had enough of it for one night. Anna almost argued, but exhaustion moved through her bones like wet sand. She stepped toward the door, then stopped. Mason. He looked at her. It was the first time she had said his name without hatred sharpening every letter. If I stay, I decide when I become Evelyn Whitmore again. Yes, and I decide what happens to Samuel Reed. Mason's gaze held hers. If his confession can be secured first, and after his voice was quiet, after he belongs to you. Anna nodded once. She walked past him into the hallway, then paused beneath the low gold light. The pistol was still in her hand. The ledger was against her side. Her fake passport was in her bag, useless now, a paper door to a life that had already burned behind her. At the far end of the hall, a mirror caught her reflection. For a second, she saw Anna Blake in damp clothes and cheap shoes, hollow-eyed and afraid. Then she straightened. The face in the mirror changed. Not completely, not yet, but enough. Mason came to stand behind her, leaving distance between them. Anna kept her eyes on the reflection. My father raised a daughter, she said. The world buried a ghost. Samuel Reed built a throne over our ashes. Her voice was calm now, too calm for grief, just right for war. She turned from the mirror and faced Mason Cole. Teach me how to walk into a room full of wolves and make them remember my name. Mason did not answer her right away. He stood in the hallway with the quiet patience of a man who understood that certain sentences did not need immediate replies. Some sentences were doors, some were knives. Evelyn had just given him both. Walking into a room full of wolves is easy, he said at last. The trick is making them wonder which one of them you are going to bite first. Evelyn looked at her reflection again. The woman in the mirror wore damp clothes, tired eyes, and the remains of a life built from hiding. But the angle of her chin had changed. It was slight, almost invisible, but Mason saw it. Of course he did. He saw everything. Then start there, she said. Mason stepped past her and opened the door to a room at the end of the corridor. It was not a bedroom. It was a private library, windowless and warm, with walls of dark shelves and a long table at the center. Old maps of the Gulf Coast ports were spread beneath glass. Red pins marked shipping routes. Black pins marked territory controlled by Victor Hale. White pins marked families that had once served the Whitmores before fear bent their knees toward Samuel Reed. Evelyn walked to the table slowly. Her father's world lay in front of her, carved into lines, ports, roads, debts, and blood. She touched one of the white pins near Baton Rouge. "Who is this Henry Vale?" Mason said. "Dock boss, 72. Loyal to your father until the day the estate burned. After that, he gave Reed enough obedience to keep his sons alive, but he never drank with him, never sat at his table, never called him sir. That matters. In our world, that is almost a declaration of war." Evelyn studied the map. "Where is he now, New Orleans?" "Runs a small freight yard by the river." "Bring him." Mason watched her. "You are not ready." Evelyn turned. "You said I need people who knew me." "Yes." "Then bring him. He has not seen you since you were 13. He may not believe you. He will. Because of your face. Because my father taught me the names of his sons. Caleb, Jonah, and Michael. Michael drowned in Lake Pontchartrain when he was 8. Henry still leaves flowers at the water every August." Mason's expression shifted. Evelyn saw the calculation move behind his eyes. "You remember that I remember everything I tried to forget." The room went quiet. For the first time, Mason looked at her not as a hidden heir, not as a weapon, and not as a useful answer to 12 years of accusation. He looked at her as if she had just placed a crown on the table herself. "I will send for Henry," he said. "No." Evelyn picked up the white pin and pressed it back into the map. "You will ask him to come. If he was loyal to my father, he deserves that much." Mason's mouth curved faintly. "Careful, Miss Whitmore." With what? Sounding like a ruler. She held his gaze. "Maybe you are finally listening correctly." By dawn, the rain had stopped, leaving the estate wrapped in gray light and wet cypress shadows. Evelyn did not sleep. She sat in the library with her father's ledger open in front of her, and read until the names blurred. Some she remembered from childhood dinners. Some were ghosts with signatures. Some were men who had smiled at her mother and later served the man who stole her house. Mason came in just after sunrise with 2 cups of coffee. He set one beside her. She looked at it. "No poison. If I wanted you dead, I have had several easier chances. That is becoming your favorite argument. It remains true." She took the coffee. It was black bitter and strong enough to make her heart remember its job. Mason sat across from her jacket, removed sleeves rolled to his forearms. Without the coat, he looked less like a public threat and more like the kind that waited until the door was closed. "You need to learn the room before you enter it," he said. "I know rooms. You know how to disappear inside them. That is different." Evelyn hated that he was right. Mason took a sheet of paper and wrote 3 names: Victor Hale, Samuel Reed, Henry Vale. He turned the page toward her. "Tell me what each man wants." Victor Hale wants power, too vague. Samuel Reed wants my father's life. Closer, but not enough. Henry Vale wants the past back. Mason tapped the table once. There. That is the mistake most people make. The past cannot be returned. It can only be used. Evelyn leaned back. "You sound like a man who has never loved anything he lost." Mason's eyes lifted to hers. The air changed. "I loved my younger brother," he said. The words were flat, not cold. Flat in the way old pain became when carried too long. Evelyn said nothing. Mason looked down at the names again. Daniel was 16 when my father was arrested after the Whitmore massacre. Hale's people grabbed him outside a boxing gym. They left him alive because dead boys create martyrs. Broken ones create warnings. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the coffee cup. What happened to him? He lived 3 years. Not well. The silence between them became something neither could easily step around. I did not know, she said. No reason you should. You hated my family for that. I hated the accusation. I hated your name because men used it as a blade against mine. I hated your father because he was dead and still powerful enough to ruin us. And now Mason looked at her. Now his daughter is sitting in my library drinking my coffee and insulting my strategy. She almost smiled. Almost. That does not answer the question. No, he said, it does not. Before she could press him, the door opened. Grant entered first, still pale from blood loss and stubborn enough to pretend the sling beneath his jacket did not exist. Behind him came a small elderly woman in a navy coat, white hair pinned at the nape of her neck, gloved hands clasped tightly around a worn leather purse. Evelyn stood before, she understood why. The woman stopped. Her eyes moved over Evelyn's face. Once, twice, then down to the silver magnolia hairpin lying beside the ledger. The purse slipped from her hands. "My sweet lord," the woman whispered. Evelyn could not breathe. Lillian Brooks took one trembling step forward. Nobody moved. Not Mason, not Grant, not the guards at the door. The old woman touched Evelyn's cheek with fingers that shook. "I braided your hair for Easter Sunday. You cried because your mother made you wear white gloves." Evelyn let out a sound that was almost a laugh and almost a sob. "I hated those gloves. You hid them in the pantry behind the flour. You found them. I found everything." Lillian pulled her into her arms. For 12 years, Evelyn had survived without allowing herself to be held like someone precious. She had taught her body to stiffen against comfort. But Lillian smelled like lavender soap and old linen like the nursery wing before smoke took it like a world that had once known her name without danger attached to it. Evelyn folded. Only for a moment. Only enough to press her face against Lillian's shoulder and remember she had been a child before she was a ghost. Mason turned away, first giving her privacy without leaving the room. That small mercy reached her even through the grief. When Evelyn stepped back, her eyes were dry again. Lillian noticed. "So much of your mother in that face," she said softly, "and so much of your father in the way you hide the wound." Evelyn swallowed. "I need you to tell them who I am. I will tell anyone still breathing." Mason stepped closer. "Mrs. Brooks, we need more than recognition. We need things only the household knew." Lillian lifted her chin. "You think I came empty-handed?" She opened her purse and withdrew a folded cloth packet. Inside were photographs, old household records, a baptism certificate, and a small gold bracelet engraved with the initials EWW. Evelyn stared at it. "I lost that. No baby. I took it from your room after the fire before Reed's people sealed the house. I kept it because I could not keep you." Her voice cracked on the last word. Evelyn took the bracelet. It was too small for her now, made for the wrist of a girl who still believed doors opened because fathers stood behind them. Mason watched the exchange with unreadable eyes. Lillian turned to him. "If you are using her, Mr. Cole, I will poison you myself." Grant coughed once, which might have been a laugh. Mason gave the old woman a respectful nod. "Get in line." Lillian did not smile. "I am serious, so am I." Evelyn looked between them. "For the record, I am standing right here." Lillian touched her hand. "Yes, Miss Evelyn, you are." That afternoon, the estate changed shape around her. Eli transformed the library into a war room. Names went up on boards. Old alliances were sorted. Men who could be trusted, men who could be frightened, men who needed proof, men who needed blood. Lillian sat beside Evelyn and filled gaps the files could not. Henry Vale will kneel if he believes Lillian said. He will not kneel, Evelyn replied. Not to me. Lillian looked pleased. No, he will not. He will lower his head. That is more valuable. Mason stood near the fireplace listening. And Reed, he asked. Lillian's mouth tightened. Samuel Reed always wanted to be loved by people he envied. He will cry before he tells the truth. Do not mistake tears for repentance. Evelyn wrote that down. Mason noticed. You taking notes, I spent 12 years learning how to carry plates and lie to landlords. I can learn this. You were born into this. I was born into Sunday dresses, family rules, and adults lowering their voices when I entered rooms. I was not born knowing how to take a kingdom back from a traitor. Mason crossed to the table and leaned beside her. Then learn faster. She looked up. Careful. With what, sounding like a man who thinks he can command me. His eyes held hers. I do not command you, Evelyn. I provoke you. There is a difference. The use of her real name struck differently now, less like exposure, more like a match being dragged along stone. Lillian looked between them and said nothing, but her raised eyebrow said enough. By evening, Henry Vale arrived. He came without a driver in a dark suit that had seen better years with a cane he did not seem to need, and eyes that had not softened with age. Mason met him in the foyer, but Henry barely looked at him. His attention went straight to Evelyn. She stood at the foot of the staircase wearing a simple black dress Lillian had found in one of the guest wardrobes. The silver magnolia hairpin held back one side of her dark hair. Around her wrist was the little gold bracelet on a chain too small to wear properly, but visible. Henry Vale stopped 10 feet away. His face did not change. Old men in their world had survived by letting surprise die before it reached the skin. Evelyn walked down the last step. Mr. Vale, she said. His eyes narrowed. Who are you? She did not flinch. You brought my father figs every July because your wife's tree grew too many. He pretended to hate them. My mother used them in cake. Henry's cane shifted in his hand. Anyone could know that. Your youngest son drowned in August. My father went to the lake with you. He came home with mud on his shoes and did not speak during dinner. My mother told me grief did not always make noise. Henry's jaw tightened. Still, he did not bend. Evelyn took one more step. In the chapel behind our house there is a loose tile beneath the third pew on the left. You hid a bottle of bourbon there during my parents' Christmas party in 2009. My father found it and drank half before putting it back. Henry stared at her. Then something broke across his face. Not weakness. Recognition. Little Magnolia, he whispered. Evelyn's throat closed. Henry removed his hat. He did not kneel. He lowered his head. Your father was my friend. I know. I served Reed because I thought you were dead. I know that too. His eyes lifted. If you mean to take back the Whitmore name, child, do not ask men like me to believe. Give us something to stand behind. Evelyn looked at Mason, then back at Henry. I am not asking for belief. I am giving you a choice. Stand behind me because I am Thomas Whitmore's daughter, or stand aside because I am not my father, and I will not beg old men to remember their courage. The room went still. Grant looked impressed despite himself. Mason looked at Evelyn as if she had just done exactly what he had hoped and something he had not expected. Henry Vale stared at her for a long moment. Then he smiled slow and fierce. There she is. It was the second time someone had said that to her. This time she believed it. The days that followed did not feel like days. They felt like metal being heated, beaten, cooled, and heated again. Mason taught her how to read a room without looking desperate to read it. "Never search for the most powerful man," he said, while they walked through the empty ballroom beneath the estate. "Search for the man everyone checks before speaking." Evelyn stood beneath the chandelier, arms folded. "That is usually you, usually modest, accurate." He taught her how to let silence work, how to accept a glass without drinking, how to let a threat hang unfinished so the listener built something worse in his own imagination. Grant taught her how to stand when armed men moved nearby. "Your shoulders give you away," he said. "My shoulders. You wait for the shot, stop waiting. Decide you already heard it. That makes no sense. It will when you stop flinching." He fired a blank round behind her an hour later. She cursed him so violently that Mason, watching from the doorway, laughed under his breath. Evelyn threw the empty magazine at him. He caught it. Better, he said. Eli taught her the modern war. Encrypted messages, shell companies, backdoor access to port databases, which judges were bought, which journalists were hungry, which federal agents took money, and which took pride being more expensive but occasionally more useful. Lillian taught her how to become Evelyn in public without losing Anna's survival instincts. "Your mother never rushed into a room," Lillian said, adjusting the fall of a deep green gown against Evelyn's shoulders. She let the room come to her. "I am not my mother, no. Your mother was sunlight with steel underneath." Lillian fastened the clasp at Evelyn's neck. "You are steel that remembers sunlight." Evelyn looked at herself in the mirror. The gown fit too well. Her hair was swept back. The cheap waitress had vanished so completely that it frightened her. Mason appeared in the doorway. He stopped. For once, he had no immediate comment. Evelyn saw his reflection. What? His gaze moved from her hair to her eyes, then to the bare line of her throat. Nothing. That was not nothing. "No," he said, "it was discipline." Heat moved through the room, quiet and immediate. Lillian stepped back with the dignity of a woman pretending not to notice a fire starting in her own curtains. "I will check the shoes," she said, and left them alone. Evelyn turned from the mirror. "Do you practice that? What, looking at people like you already know how they taste?" Mason's expression did not change, but his eyes did. "Only when I am trying not to find out." The air tightened between them. Evelyn should have stepped away. She did not. "You still want my name," she said. "Yes. And my ledger, yes. And my claim, yes. At least one of us is honest." Mason moved closer. "I want those things. I also want Victor Hale stripped of every root he stole Samuel Reed on his knees, and my brother's name freed from a lie that buried him before he died." He stopped in front of her. "And right now, Evelyn, I want to kiss you badly enough to consider it a strategic error." Her breath caught. The truth of it was dangerous because it did not arrive dressed as romance. It came like everything else between them, direct, controlled, edged. "Do not," she said. Mason nodded once. He stepped back. That restraint unsettled her more than the desire. "Why not?" he asked. Evelyn looked at him. "Because if you kiss me before I know whether I can trust you, I might forget the difference." Mason's voice lowered. "You will not. You sound sure. I have seen you hold a gun on me through a broken door. Trust is not going to sneak up on you." Despite herself, she smiled. It was small, real, gone quickly. Then the house shook. A deep impact rolled through the walls. The lights flickered once. Mason turned before the second blast hit. Grant's voice cracked through the intercom. "South Gate, 2 vehicles, armed." Mason reached under his jacket. Evelyn was already moving. He caught her wrist. Stay behind the interior line. She looked down at his hand, then at his face. We talked about commands. His grip released. This is not training. No, she said, taking the pistol from the drawer beside the mirror. It is practice with consequences. She ran before he could stop her. The estate became sound and motion. Guards moved through halls. Steel shutters dropped behind windows. Red lights washed the corridors. Somewhere outside, gunfire snapped through the night. Evelyn followed Lillian into the secure passage, then stopped when she saw movement on the security screen. A man in a guard uniform crossed the east corridor alone, heading toward the server room. Wrong direction. Wrong pace. Wrong hand placement near his waist. Evelyn's pulse slowed. Not an attacker outside. A leak inside. She stepped out of the safe passage. Lillian grabbed her arm. Miss Evelyn, lock the door behind me. Absolutely not. Evelyn met her eyes. The river remembers its own. Lillian went pale. Then she let go. Evelyn moved through the east corridor, barefoot, pistol-raised gown whispering around her legs. Smoke from the south gate drifted faintly through the vents. Alarms pulsed red against the walls. The false guard reached the server room door and pulled a device from his jacket. Evelyn pressed the barrel to the back of his head. Drop it. He froze. Now. The device hit the floor. He began to turn. She struck him with the pistol grip before he could complete the motion. He went down hard, blood darkening his eyebrow. Mason arrived seconds later with Grant behind him. His eyes moved from the man on the floor to Evelyn's bare feet to the gun in her hand. You were supposed to stay behind the line. Evelyn breathed once steady. He was supposed to guard the hallway. Grant crouched and searched the man. Tracker. Signal relay. Hale wanted eyes inside. Mason looked at Evelyn again. Something fierce moved through his expression. Not anger. Not relief. Respect with teeth. You saw him. I survived by seeing men who thought I was too small to notice. The gunfire outside faded. Mason's men had contained the attack. Hale's message was clear enough. He knew she was alive. He knew she was with Mason. He was afraid enough to strike first. Evelyn looked down at the unconscious traitor. What is his name? Grant checked the badge. Peter Lang. Mason's jaw tightened. He has worked here 4 years. Evelyn looked at him. Samuel worked for my father longer. That landed. Mason gave one sharp nod. Take him downstairs. Alive. Grant dragged the man away. Mason and Evelyn stood alone in the red emergency light. Her hair had come loose. The green gown was torn at the hem. Her bare feet were streaked with dust. She looked nothing like the polished air Lillian had made in the mirror. She looked more dangerous. Mason stepped closer. You could have been killed. So could you. That is different. Because you are useful. Because I am used to it. Evelyn laughed softly, breathless and angry. There it is, the great Mason Cole willing to bleed for everyone but terrified someone might stand beside him while he does it. His eyes darkened. You know nothing about what terrifies me. No, I think I do. Careful. She stepped closer this time. You are not afraid of bullets. You are afraid of needing someone who does not need your permission to leave. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Mason reached for her, slowly giving her time to move away. She did not. His hand touched the side of her face thumb, brushing a trace of dust near her cheekbone. Evelyn, he said. Her name in his voice no longer sounded like exposure. It sounded like surrender held back by force. She closed the distance herself. The kiss was not gentle, It was not sweet. It was rainwater smoke, grief, anger, and 12 years of being alive when she was supposed to be dead. Mason kissed like a man who had spent his life controlling rooms and had just found the one thing in them he could not command. Evelyn kissed like a woman furious that she wanted anything from him, and more furious that she wanted this. When they broke apart, the alarms had stopped. Neither of them moved away. Mason rested his forehead near hers, not quite touching. "This complicates things," he said. Evelyn's mouth curved. "Only if you were pretending they were simple." A voice sounded from the far hallway. "Boss." Eli stood there, tablet in hand, carefully looking anywhere except at them. Mason turned, composure returning like a door closing. What Eli swallowed. "Peter Lang sent one file before we cut the relay." Evelyn's stomach tightened. "What file?" Eli looked at her. "A still image from the library. Your face, the ledger, Mrs. Brooks in the background." Mason's expression went cold. "Who received it?" Eli hesitated. "Samuel Reed." Evelyn felt the old world tilt. Not fear this time. Recognition. Samuel knew. Not rumors, not whispers, not a frightened message from Hale. He had seen her face. Evelyn walked back to the mirror room without speaking. The others followed at a distance. She stood before the mirror again. The gown was torn. Her mouth was swollen from Mason's kiss. Her eyes were bright with something that had burned past grief into purpose. Lillian entered quietly, carrying a velvet box. "I was saving this for tomorrow," she said. She opened it. Inside lay her mother's diamond magnolia necklace. Evelyn stared. Mason spoke from behind her. "I found it in a private collection in Miami. Reed sold it 6 years ago." Evelyn touched the diamonds with 2 fingers. Her mother's necklace, the one she had worn the night of the last dinner, the one Evelyn believed had melted in the fire with everything else. "You bought it, I returned it." Her eyes lifted to his in the mirror. "You should have told me." "Yes." "Why did you not?" "Because I did not want gratitude." "What did you want?" Mason's gaze held hers. "To see you wear it when you stopped hiding." Lillian fastened the necklace around Evelyn's throat. The diamond settled against her skin like cold stars. Evelyn looked at herself. Not Anna Blake, not the frightened girl in the drainage tunnel, not yet the ruler her father might have raised. Something new, something made from all of them. She turned to Mason. "Call Henry Vale." Mason watched her carefully. "For what?" "Tell him to contact every family that still remembers my father with respect or guilt. Tell them to attend the Magnolia Foundation Gala." Eli looked up from the tablet. "That gives Reed less than a day to prepare." Evelyn picked up her father's ledger. "No, it gives him less than a day to run." Mason's eyes sharpened with approval. "And if he does," Evelyn closed the ledger against her chest. "Then he proves his guilt before I ever enter the room." Grant, standing in the doorway with a fresh bandage under his jacket, gave a low whistle. "I like her better than you." Mason did not look away from Evelyn. "So do I." The words hit the room with more weight than a flirtation. Evelyn felt them, but she did not let them move her. Not yet. She walked past Mason toward the library, the diamonds at her throat catching the low light. Men turned as she passed. Not because Mason was behind her, because she no longer looked like someone being protected. She looked like the reason protection existed. At the library table, Evelyn opened the Whitmore ledger to the first page. Her father's handwriting waited there steady as a pulse. She took a pen and wrote beneath his name. Evelyn Whitmore. The ink looked strange at first. Then it looked inevitable. Mason stood across from her. "Once you do this, Anna Blake is dead." Evelyn looked at the name she had written. "Anna Blake kept me alive." "Yes." She deserves better than to be called a lie. Mason accepted the correction with a slight nod. What does she deserve? Evelyn closed the ledger. To rest. Outside, the first pale line of morning touched the cypress trees. Inside, phones began ringing across the estate as Henry Vale carried the impossible news into the bloodstream of the old families. Lillian pressed Evelyn's black gala gloves into her hands. Eli prepared the evidence. Grant checked weapons with one arm. Mason stood near the door, watching the woman he had found in a waitress uniform become someone the city would have to answer to. Evelyn pulled on the gloves slowly. Then she looked at Mason. Tell me one more thing, anything. When I walk into that ballroom, where will you stand? Mason's answer came without hesitation. Beside you, not in front of me. Never again. Evelyn held his gaze for one long second. Then she nodded. The cars were waiting under the gray morning sky, black and polished engines, humming like restrained animals. Evelyn stepped into the first one, wearing her mother's diamonds, her father's ledger in her lap, and Anna Blake's survival hidden beneath Evelyn Whitmore's skin. Mason sat across from her. This time, she did not point a gun at him. This time, she did not lower her eyes. The city opened around them as the convoy rolled toward New Orleans, toward marble floors, champagne glasses, old enemies, and the man who had stolen her father's house. Evelyn looked out at the waking streets. Samuel always hated being late, she said. Mason watched her reflection in the glass. Then we should arrive after him. For the first time that morning, Evelyn smiled. Yes, she said, let him wait. Samuel Reed was already waiting when the first champagne tower caught the light. The Roosevelt Hotel had dressed itself for sin in silk and crystal. Gold chandeliers floated over the ballroom like captured suns. White roses climbed the marble columns. A string quartet played near the grand staircase, soft enough to flatter the guests, and quiet enough not to interrupt the private threats being exchanged behind smiling mouths. Every important predator in the South had arrived under the cover of charity. Senators shook hands with smugglers. Bankers laughed beside union men. Judges accepted kisses on both cheeks from women whose husbands owned more guns than restaurants. The Magnolia Foundation Gala was supposed to raise money for children's hospitals and hurricane relief. Everyone in the room knew the true business would happen after dessert when doors closed, cameras went dark, and old families decided who got to breathe comfortably for another year. Samuel stood near the center of it all wearing a black tuxedo, a silver watch, and the calm expression of a man who had stolen enough to believe ownership was the same as belonging. Victor Hale stood beside him. Hale was tall, broad, handsome in the polished way of men who paid other people to fear them. His smile moved easily. His eyes did not. He held a glass of champagne but had not taken a sip. Every few seconds his gaze moved toward the ballroom entrance. Samuel noticed. "You are anxious," he said quietly. Hale smiled at a passing woman before answering. "I am alert. There is a difference. Anxious men pray. Alert men prepare." Samuel looked toward the doors. "She is not coming." Hale's smile faded by 1 degree. "You saw the image. I saw a woman who looks like a dead girl. You saw Evelyn Whitmore." Samuel's fingers tightened around his glass. The name still had power. It moved through his bones like cold water. "She died 12 years ago." "Then why did your hand shake when I showed you her face?" Samuel looked at him sharply. Hale's voice stayed low. "Do not unravel in public. If Mason Cole walks in with that woman, she is an actress. A hungry little nobody dressed in diamonds. A trick, you understand?" Samuel swallowed. "Yes. You will say it before anyone else thinks it. Yes." And if she speaks, Samuel's eyes darkened. "Then she lies." Hale leaned closer. "No. Then she dies later. Not here. Not in front of them. Tonight she must be humiliated before she can become useful." The string quartet shifted into a slower song. Samuel looked around the ballroom. Henry Vale stood near the far wall speaking to two old dock bosses. That alone irritated him. Henry had refused to visit the estate for years. Now he had come to the gala dressed in his best suit, watching the doors with the stillness of a man waiting for a funeral procession. Several other old Whitmore loyalists had also arrived. Too many. Samuel felt sweat beneath his collar. He lifted his glass and drank too quickly. Hale noticed, but said nothing. At the entrance to the hotel, Mason Cole stepped out of the black car first. Camera flashes from the charity photographers lit the curb in quick bursts. Rainwater still clung to the street from the storm, turning the hotel lights into long gold rivers along the pavement. Mason adjusted one cuff, then turned toward the open car door. Evelyn sat inside for one final breath. Her mother's diamond magnolia necklace rested against her throat. Black gloves covered her hands. Her gown was deep ivory, almost white, fitted through the bodice and falling in clean lines to the floor. Lillian had chosen it because Evelyn's mother once said white made liars nervous. In her lap lay a small black clutch. Inside it, folded carefully, was one page copied from her father's ledger. Not the most important page, the most personal one. Mason offered his hand. Evelyn looked at it. In the car window, she could see Anna Blake staring back from beneath the silk and diamonds. Tired waitress, false name, cheap shoes, a woman who had survived by being overlooked. Evelyn did not hate her. She owed her everything. Then she placed her gloved hand in Mason's and stepped out. The photographers shouted Mason's name. A few shouted questions about his donation, his business interests, the rumors of federal pressure. Then the questions died. They saw Evelyn. Silence did not fall all at once. It moved outward in rings. First the photographers, then the hotel staff, then the guests near the lobby doors. A woman in emerald satin lowered her drink and forgot to blink. An older man near the coat check crossed himself before he could stop his own hand. Mason leaned close enough that only Evelyn could hear him. Breathe. I am. Like someone who wants to live. She looked up at him. I do. That answer touched something in his face, but he hid it before anyone else could see. They walked inside together. The ballroom doors stood ahead, tall and gilded, guarded by two hotel attendants who looked suddenly unsure whether they were still men or part of the furniture. Grant moved ahead with two of Mason's men. Eli stayed behind them, eyes on his phone, already inside every system the hotel thought it owned. Lillian walked at Evelyn's left, small and straight-backed, wearing navy silk and pearls. Henry Vale waited beyond the ballroom doors, visible through the glass his hat held against his chest. Evelyn stopped before entering. For one moment the past opened beneath her feet. She saw herself at 13, small and muddy, crawling through the drainage tunnel while the world burned behind her. She saw her father's hand pressing the signet ring into her palm. She heard his voice. If you live, they lose. Mason's hand remained steady beneath hers. Ready, he asked. Evelyn looked at the ballroom. No. His eyes moved to her face. She smiled faintly. But I am going in. The doors opened. The music faltered. One violin continued for 2 lonely notes before falling silent. Every head turned. Mason Cole entered first, dark suit-controlled expression power moving with him like weather. But the room did not stay on Mason. It went to the woman on his arm. Evelyn Whitmore walked into the Roosevelt ballroom as if she had never crawled out of a grave, never carried coffee to men who called her sweetheart, never slept with a pistol beneath a thin pillow in a rented room above a pawn shop. The diamonds at her throat caught the chandelier light. Samuel Reed saw them first. His face emptied. The champagne glass slipped from his hand and struck the marble floor, bursting into bright pieces. The sound cracked through the ballroom. Evelyn heard it and turned her head. Across the room, Samuel stared at her as if the dead had learned manners and come dressed for dinner. She smiled, not kindly. "Hello, Uncle Samuel." The words carried farther than they should have. A murmur ran through the crowd. Samuel took one step back. "No." Evelyn continued walking. Mason stayed beside her, not ahead of her. The distinction did not go unnoticed. Old men watched such things. Women with diamonds watched them better. Victor Hale moved first. He stepped in front of Samuel with a laugh too smooth to be honest. "Mason," he said loud enough for the surrounding guests to hear, "I have to admit this is theatrical even for you." Mason did not answer. Evelyn stopped 10 feet away. Hale looked her over with open insult. "Where did you find her?" "A lounge in Biloxi, some actress behind on rent." Evelyn met his gaze. "I was behind on rent in New Orleans, actually." A few people shifted. The answer was too calm, too unashamed. Hale's smile thinned. "At least she is honest about that." Evelyn stepped closer. "My father once said you were the kind of man who polished his shoes because he could not polish his blood." The room tightened. Hale's eyes hardened. Samuel made a small wounded sound behind him. Evelyn turned her attention to Samuel. "You remember that, don't you? Daddy said it after you invited Hale to dinner and Mother refused to serve him in the blue room." Samuel's lips parted. No words came. Hale laughed again, but this time the sound had edges. Any hired girl can memorize family gossip. Evelyn nodded once. "That is true." She reached into her clutch and removed the folded page. "But not every hired girl carries Thomas Whitmore's ledger." The name moved through the room like a struck match. Eli tapped his phone. The ballroom screens, which had been showing silent footage of smiling children and foundation projects, went black. Then the first image appeared, a scanned page from the ledger. Thomas Whitmore's handwriting. Names, dates, port access notes, a warning written 2 weeks before the massacre. "Watch Hale. Watch the East Gate. Samuel is afraid of poverty." Samuel turned gray. Hale's expression sharpened, but he did not move. Evelyn spoke, her voice steady enough to make the room lean in. "My father wrote that before he died, before the gates opened, before men came through my mother's garden with guns." Hale lifted his glass. A touching forgery. Mason's voice entered the room like a blade. "Careful, Victor." Hale looked at him. "Or what?" Mason smiled without warmth. "Or you will keep talking." A low ripple of laughter moved through the room, brief and nervous. Evelyn did not look away from Samuel. "Tell them I am lying." Samuel swallowed. Hale turned his head slightly. "Say it." Samuel stared at Evelyn. For 12 years, she had imagined this moment in pieces. Sometimes he begged, sometimes he laughed. Sometimes she shot him before he spoke. But she had never imagined his eyes would look so frightened. Not of Mason. Of her. "She is lying," Samuel said. His voice cracked on the last word. Evelyn tilted her head. "You used to be better at that." Hale stepped forward. "Enough. This is a charity event, not a theater for Mason Cole's wounded pride." Lillian Brooks moved then. Small as she was, the crowd parted for her because certainty makes its own space. "She is Evelyn Whitmore," Lillian said. Hale barely glanced at her. "And you are the woman who washed the blood from her nursery floor after your men burned her house." The room went utterly still. Lillian's voice did not shake. "I dressed this girl for Easter Sunday. I hid her bracelet when Reed's men stripped the house. I carried her mother's letters out beneath my coat. That woman is Evelyn Margaret Whitmore." Evelyn took off one glove and lifted her wrist. The gold child's bracelet had been attached to a thin chain. The initials E.W. caught the light. An older woman near the front gasped. Henry Vale stepped forward. His cane struck the marble once. "She knows the chapel tile," he said. Samuel looked at him with open panic. Henry's voice grew stronger. "She knows my sons. She knows the old phrase." Hale's jaw tightened. Evelyn looked around the ballroom. Some of the older families watched her with hunger now. Not romantic hunger. Political hunger. The kind that wakes when a buried flag rises from ash. She spoke in Old Creole French. The words cut through the air, elegant and merciless. The river remembers its own. The reaction was immediate. Men who had doubted her stopped doubting. A silver-haired woman near the back covered her mouth. A dock captain bowed his head. One of the old LaRue brothers stepped away from Samuel, as if betrayal could stain through proximity. Evelyn continued in the dead dialect, her accent polished by childhood grief and blood. "My father said that to loyal men. My mother whispered it when she feared the house had too many enemies. Samuel Reed heard it at our table and sold the table anyway. Samuel whispered Evelyn, please. There it was. Her name. From his mouth. The room heard. Hale closed his eyes for half a second, the face of a man watching a weak bridge collapse beneath his own feet. Mason leaned slightly toward Evelyn. You have him. She did not look at him. No, she said softly. He has himself. Eli changed the screen. Wire transfers appeared. Offshore accounts. Shell company documents. Security route changes from the night of the massacre. A payment to Samuel Reed 3 days before the East Gate failed. A second payment after the estate burned. A transfer of Whitmore assets into Reed-controlled holding companies. Then communications between Reed and Hale. Cold words arranged around murder. Samuel's breathing became audible. Hale looked at the screens, then at the crowd measuring exits, loyalties, guns. Evelyn saw it. So did Mason. Grant shifted near the right wall. Mason's men were already positioned, scattered through the room as waiters, donors, security, and silent threats. Evelyn stepped toward Samuel. The crowd opened. Hale reached for her arm. Mason caught his wrist before contact. The movement was fast and quiet. Hale and Mason locked eyes. Mason's voice was low. Touch her, and lose the hand in public. Hale pulled away slowly, smiling as if amused. Evelyn never stopped moving. She stood before Samuel. He was older than she remembered. Softer, smaller. The giant from childhood had been eaten by the coward who replaced him. "Did you know I was home?" she asked. Samuel's eyes filled with tears. "Evie, do not call me that." He flinched. She leaned closer. "Did you know I was home?" His mouth worked soundlessly. Hale spoke from behind her. "This is absurd. Reed, say nothing." Evelyn's eyes stayed on Samuel. "I remember the last book you gave me, a blue cover. You wrote inside it, 'Be brave, little Magnolia.' I kept it under my pillow the night you opened the gate." Samuel's tears spilled over. "I did not know you were there." The words left him like blood from a cut. The ballroom seemed to inhale. Evelyn felt the child inside her go still. "You did not know." Samuel shook his head, crying now. "You were supposed to be at school. Your father changed the schedule. I did not know. And if you had—" He covered his face. "Please." Evelyn's voice lowered. "If you had known I was home, would you have stopped them?" Samuel sobbed. That was answer enough. But Evelyn wanted the room to hear him. "Say it." Hale's voice cracked like a whip. "Reed, shut your mouth." Mason looked at Grant. Grant moved. So did Hale's men. For one charged second, the ballroom balanced on the edge of slaughter. Then Henry Vale lifted his cane and struck one of Hale's men across the wrist as the man reached for his weapon. The gun clattered to the floor. That broke the spell. Mason's people drew first. Hale's men froze as silencers appeared from beneath jackets and behind serving trays. No one fired. Not yet. The old families watched the balance shift with the cold attention of gamblers seeing the final card. Evelyn did not turn around. "Samuel," she said, "say it." Samuel fell to his knees. "Yes," he whispered, louder. He looked up at her, ruined. "Yes. I gave Hale the gate codes. I moved the guards. I told them where Thomas kept the ledgers. I told them where your mother would be during dinner." Evelyn felt Mason behind her close, but not touching. And my brother Samuel pressed his forehead to the marble. "I told them the nursery wing would be guarded last." A sound moved through the ballroom. Not outrage exactly, recognition of something too ugly to hide from. Evelyn's hand closed around the ledger page until the paper bent. Her brothers had been 8 and 10, one afraid of storms, one always stealing figs from the kitchen. They had died in beds that Samuel marked on a map. For a moment the room blurred. Then Anna Blake rose inside her, the waitress who had swallowed insults without breaking, the ghost who had lived above a pawn shop and paid cash for every breath. She steadied Evelyn. Hale saw the shift. He knew Reed had become useless. His hand moved toward his jacket. Mason fired first. The shot was suppressed, but the impact was not. Hale spun back into the champagne tower glass exploding around him in glittering rain. Women screamed, men ducked. Champagne rushed across the marble like pale blood. Hale hit the floor, clutching his shoulder. Grant and Mason's men closed the room in seconds. Hale groaned, trying to crawl toward the gun dropped near Henry Vale's feet. Evelyn walked to the gun and picked it up. The ballroom went silent again. Mason watched her. So did everyone else. Evelyn approached Hale and aimed at his head. Hale laughed through his pain. "You cannot do it." Evelyn looked down at him. "You burned my house." His smile twitched. "You survived. You say that like it makes you less guilty. I say it because survivors are practical. Kill me here, and half my people fight you by sunrise." Evelyn crouched beside him, the gun steady. "I know." His eyes sharpened. "Then you are smarter than your father." Mason took one step, but Evelyn lifted her free hand. He stopped. Evelyn leaned close to Hale. "My father believed men could be bound by honor. I was raised by his memory and a fake life that taught me rent is due whether you are grieving or not. So let me explain something practical." She pressed the barrel lightly beneath Hale's chin. "You are not dying first. Your accounts are. Your roots are. Your judges are. Your unions are. Your friends are going to discover loyalty becomes expensive when the woman you failed to kill owns the ledger." Hale's face lost color. That frightened him more than the gun. Evelyn stood. "Henry." Henry Vale stepped forward. "Yes, Miss Whitmore. Contact every dock that served my father. By morning, any ship carrying Hale protection waits offshore." Henry bowed his head. "With pleasure." "Eli." Eli looked up, already moving. "Freeze what you can. Half frozen. Freeze the rest." "Yes, ma'am." The room heard it. "Ma'am. Not girl, not imposter, not waitress." Mason's eyes warmed with something dangerous and proud. Evelyn turned back to Hale. "You wanted me humiliated before I became useful. Thank you for gathering the witnesses." Hale's jaw clenched. Samuel crawled toward her on his knees. "Evelyn, please, I loved you. I loved your family." She turned. The grief that crossed her face lasted less than a second, but Mason saw it. So did Lillian, who pressed a hand to her own heart. Evelyn walked to Samuel and stopped just out of reach. "You loved being trusted," she said. Samuel reached for the hem of her gown. She stepped back. "You do not touch me." He froze. "Please, I was afraid. So was I. I had debts. I had graves. I can help you. I know everything. I can give you names, you will." Hope flashed in his eyes. Then Evelyn looked at Mason. "Take him somewhere quiet." Samuel's hope died. "No. Evie. No, no, please." She turned away before his hands could reach her. Grant hauled him up with one arm. Samuel screamed her name. Not Anna. Not girl. Not imposter. Evelyn. Over and over until the ballroom doors closed behind him and swallowed the sound. Evelyn stood very still. Mason came to her side. His voice was only for her. "You did not have to turn away." "Yes," she said. "I did. Why?" She looked at the shattered champagne, the blood on marble, the old families watching her with fear and calculation. "Because if I watched him beg, I might remember being little." Mason said nothing. That was the right answer. Victor Hale was dragged up from the floor, bleeding but alive. He looked at Evelyn with hatred sharpened by fear. "This room will not hold," he said. "You think old men and pretty words make a throne?" Evelyn looked around. "No. Fear does. Debt does. Proof does. Blood does. Tonight I have all four." She faced the room. "My name is Evelyn Whitmore. My father was Thomas Whitmore. My mother was Caroline Whitmore. My brothers were James and Peter. Samuel Reed sold them. Victor Hale bought them. Mason Cole did not kill them." The room absorbed every word. "Anyone who served Reed believing my family gone may return what was stolen and stand under my protection. Anyone who served him knowing the truth should leave now and pray, 'I am slower than my father was merciful.'" No one moved. Evelyn waited. One man near the back looked toward the side door. Grant smiled at him. The man stayed where he was. Henry Vale lowered his head. "The Whitmore docks, remember?" Then another old captain did the same, and the LaRue routes. A woman in sapphire blue lifted her glass. "The Beaumont accounts." One by one, pieces of her father's world turned back toward her. Not out of love, not yet. Out of recognition, out of fear, out of the ancient hunger for a name that had returned from fire. Mason picked up a bottle from a nearby service cart. His gaze flicked over the label. Chateau Margaux 2010. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. He poured 2 glasses and handed one to Evelyn. The room watched. "To Miss Whitmore," Mason said. Evelyn took the glass. The same wine she had recommended the night he tried to humiliate her. The circle closed around them, elegant and bloody. She raised her glass. "To men who mistake silence for weakness." Her eyes moved to Hale, and to the women who let them. She drank. The ballroom followed. Crystal lifted under chandeliers. Old loyalties shifted in the air. Somewhere behind closed doors, Samuel Reed's begging stopped being audible. Hale's empire was already being cut apart by phone calls, frozen accounts, and men who had waited 12 years for someone brave enough to name the lie. Evelyn stood in the center of the room, diamonds at her throat, her father's ledger beneath her hand, Mason Cole beside her instead of before her. For the first time since the fire, the name Whitmore did not feel like a grave. It felt like a blade. Mason leaned close. "You walked in as a ghost," he murmured. Evelyn looked at the room that had begun to fear her. "No," she said. "I walked in as the bill." The glass had barely touched Evelyn's lips when the room understood the old world had ended. Not with a speech. Not with a vote. Not with some ceremony blessed by men who had spent 12 years feeding from a dead family's table. It ended in the quiet after her name. Evelyn Whitmore. The name moved through the Roosevelt ballroom like smoke, finding every crack in a locked house. Men who had spent years pretending Samuel Reed was legitimate suddenly remembered they had never liked the way he sat in Thomas Whitmore's chair. Women who had worn his diamonds now glanced at their necklaces as if they had become heavy. Captains, bankers, union men, Judges, all of them, recalculated the value of loyalty, while champagne dried sticky on the marble. Victor Hale stood near the wall between two of Mason's men, his shoulder wrapped in a white tablecloth already soaked red. He was still breathing. That was not mercy. It was strategy. Evelyn had learned the difference. Across the room, Henry Vale spoke quietly into his phone, his old voice steady with the pleasure of work he had waited too long to do. One by one, the docks began answering to the Whitmore name again. Barges were delayed. Cargo was held. Hale's private security crews found their access badges failing. A judge who had once taken Reed's money suddenly developed a fondness for procedural caution. Accounts froze before midnight. Hale watched it happen from 10 feet away. His empire did not fall with a scream. It lost oxygen by the minute. Mason stood beside Evelyn close enough for the room to read alliance, far enough for the room to understand she did not require his hand on her spine to stand upright. That mattered. Evelyn looked at him over the rim of her glass. "You are enjoying this." Mason's mouth curved. "I appreciate efficient revenge. This is not revenge." "No." She looked toward Hale. Revenge would be putting a bullet in him and sleeping badly after. And this is making sure he wakes up tomorrow with nothing but his name and the pain in his shoulder. Mason studied her for a quiet second. "Your father would have been proud." The words struck too close. Evelyn turned her face away before he could see the child in her reach for them. "My father trusted Samuel Reed. He was proud before he was betrayed. The two can exist in the same grave." She looked back at him. There was no softness in his face, not the kind people used when they wanted gratitude. Mason Cole never gave comfort with both hands. He offered it like a weapon turned carefully away from the body. It made her believe it more. Grant appeared at Mason's side. "Reed is secured." Evelyn's expression did not change. "Did he talk?" Grant glanced at Mason, then at her. "He gave names, a lot of them. Cried through most of it." Lillian, standing just behind Evelyn, closed her eyes. Evelyn did not. Keep him alive until every name is verified. Grant gave a short nod. And after. The room seemed to narrow. Mason did not answer for her. Evelyn appreciated that more than she expected. She looked across the ballroom at the old families, watching from behind glasses and careful faces. "After he faces the people whose children slept under the roof he sold." Grant's scarred face shifted with approval. "Yes, ma'am." The word landed differently now. Not courtesy, recognition. When he walked away, Lillian touched Evelyn's elbow. "You need to sit. I need to be seen standing. You're allowed to have a body, Miss Evelyn." Evelyn almost smiled. "My body can complain tomorrow." Lillian's eyes softened. "Your mother said the same thing the night she danced through a fever because your father needed the governor charmed." Evelyn looked down at the diamond magnolia necklace. Did she win? She always did. For a moment, the ballroom faded around them. Evelyn could almost see her mother in this same kind of light, laughing as if danger was only another guest to be managed. Caroline Whitmore had filled rooms with grace. Evelyn had returned with sharper edges. Maybe both belonged to the same blood. Henry Vale crossed the marble and stopped before her. He did not kneel. He was not a kneeling man. Instead, he lowered his head with old grave respect. "The East Docks are yours by morning." Evelyn held his gaze. "They were always ours." His eyes shone faintly. "Yes, Miss Whitmore, they were. And the men who served Reed, some will come crawling, some will run, some will lie. Let the runners run for one night. Fear travels faster than bullets." Henry smiled slow and fierce. "Your father used to say that." "No," Evelyn said. "My father used to say fear makes fools loud." Anna Blake learned the rest. The old man looked at her with new understanding. Then God bless Anna Blake. Evelyn swallowed. Yes, she said quietly. God bless her. Across the room, Hale laughed bitterly. The sound dragged every eye toward him. You all really believe this, he said, voice rough with pain. One girl walks in wearing stolen diamonds and suddenly the dead own the river again. Evelyn turned. The room made way for her without being asked. She stopped in front of him. My diamonds were stolen. My name was buried. My house was occupied. My father's ledger was hidden in a wall while I served wine to men who thought money made them royalty. Hale's face twisted. You are still that waitress under the dress. Evelyn leaned closer. Yes. That is why you should be afraid. His mouth closed. Evelyn Mason said quietly, not a warning. A reminder that the room was watching. She did not look away from Hale. The girl born in that house believed men could be honorable because her father was. The waitress learned men are polite when they are weak and cruel when they think no one will answer. You are not facing one woman victor. You are facing both. Hale breathed hard through his nose. You need me alive. For now. Fear flickered in his eyes. There it was. At last, Evelyn stepped back. Take him out. Mason's men moved. Hale struggled once, then stopped when Grant appeared beside him with a look that promised pain without hurry. They led him through a side door. His blood left small drops on the marble until a server hurried forward with a cloth and trembling hands. Evelyn watched the servant kneel. For years, that had been her. Cleaning the evidence of powerful people and being expected not to notice the stain. Leave it, she said. The server froze. Evelyn looked around the ballroom. Let them see where he stood. Nobody argued. Near the grand staircase, the quartet began playing again. Softly at first, then steadier. Conversation returned in careful threads. Deals were being remade before the blood dried. That was the nature of the world she had inherited. It did not stop for grief. It fed on movement. Mason offered his hand. Walk with me. Evelyn looked at it. Are you asking or directing asking? She took his hand, not because the room required it, because she wanted to feel whether his steadiness remained when nobody was shooting. It did. They walked through a side door into a quiet corridor lined with mirrors and closed rooms. The noise of the gala dulled behind them. At the end of the hall, a balcony overlooked the city. New Orleans glittered beneath a clearing sky, wet rooftops shining under moonlight, the river moving black and patient beyond the buildings. Evelyn stepped outside. Cool air touched her face. For the first time all night she breathed without performing it. Mason stood beside her, hands in his pockets. You held the room. I almost shot him, I know. You would have stopped me, no. That surprised her enough to make her turn. Mason looked out at the city. I would have handled the consequences. You think that is romantic? I think it is honest. She studied him in the silver light. I do not know what to do with you. Most people choose fear. I am not most people. No, he said. You made that clear when you insulted me over wine. A faint smile touched her mouth. You deserved it. I ordered the wrong vintage. You insulted my apron, that too. The smile faded, but not painfully. For a while, they stood in silence, the kind that did not demand to be filled. Then Evelyn said, I hated you for 12 years. I hated your ghost, my ghost, your name, your family, the way people used your tragedy to chain mine. I hated a dead girl because she was easier to fight than the men still breathing. Evelyn looked back at the city. I hated a living man because the truth was too hard to find. Mason nodded. Fair. She laughed softly. Nothing about this is fair. No. He turned to her then. I will not ask you to marry me for strategy tonight. Her pulse shifted. The engagement was your idea. It worked, yes. It can remain a lie until you decide otherwise. Evelyn searched his face for the trap. There was none she could see. That did not mean none existed. But she had learned that not every danger needed to be avoided. Some needed to be understood. And if I decide never, then I will still return your ports, clear your father's name, and keep my hands off what is yours. That sounds noble. It is not. It will irritate me every day. This time, her laugh was real. Small, but real. Mason looked at her like he wanted to memorize the sound and punish anyone who interrupted it. Evelyn stepped closer. You are still using me. Yes. And I am using you. Yes. And somewhere in all this you kissed me like a man making a mistake on purpose. His eyes darkened. I have made worse decisions with less conviction. She lifted one gloved hand to his chest. His heart beat steadily beneath her palm. You scare me, she said. His voice dropped. Good. Her eyes sharpened. That was not a compliment. I know. No, you do not. You scare me because I wanted to trust you before I gave myself permission. Mason went still. The city hummed below them. Evelyn continued quieter now. I spent years surviving by never needing anyone. Then you opened my grave, handed me a war, gave me back my mother's necklace, and stood beside me when every man in that room waited to see if I would break. You did not. I know. She touched his jaw. But I might have. Mason covered her hand with his. Then I would have stood there until you remembered how not to. It was not a sweet answer. It was better. Evelyn kissed him first. This kiss was slower than the first one. Less fire, more recognition. His hand settled at her waist with restraint that trembled at the edges. She felt the violence in him held back by choice, and the choice mattered. She had known men who took. Mason, for all his sins, waited where it counted. When she pulled away, his forehead rested lightly against hers. Inside the ballroom, applause rose for something neither of them cared about. Evelyn whispered, I am not yours. Mason answered at once. No. She looked into his eyes. And you are not mine. A slight smile touched his mouth. No. Her fingers tightened in his jacket. Not unless you choose to be. The smile vanished. There at last she had found a way to unsettle him. Before he could answer, Lillian appeared in the balcony doorway. Miss Evelyn. Evelyn turned. Lillian's face was pale but peaceful. Samuel is asking for you. The name passed between them like cold wind. Evelyn released Mason and stepped back. Is he still crying? Yes. Good. Lillian waited. Mason watched Evelyn carefully. She looked at the city once more, then at the doors leading back into the hotel. For 12 years, she had imagined that seeing Samuel Reed broken would heal something. It had not. It had only opened a clean path through the ruin. She touched the magnolia necklace. No, she said. Lillian blinked. No. He does not get my face as his last comfort. Something proud and sad moved across Lillian's features. What should I tell Grant? Evelyn's voice was steady. Tell him Samuel Reed belongs to the families he betrayed. Every confession first. Every stolen dollar traced. Every grave named. Then, justice. Lillian nodded. And if they ask what justice means, Evelyn looked at Mason. He did not speak for her. She looked back at Lillian. They know. Lillian left. Mason remained beside Evelyn on the balcony as the first pale hint of dawn touched the edge of the sky. You chose not to see him, he said. I already saw him, on his knees. That was enough. And hail, he wakes up poor. Mason's mouth curved. Cruel woman. Practical man. They returned to the ballroom together. This time, no one mistook the arrangement. Mason Cole was not presenting Evelyn Whitmore to the room. Evelyn Whitmore was allowing Mason Cole to stand at her side. By morning, the gala had become legend. By noon, ships carrying Hale contracts sat idle along the Gulf. By evening, Samuel Reed's confession had reached every family that mattered, along with copies of Thomas Whitmore's ledger, and proof that the Cole name had been framed. Men who had cursed Mason's father in public sent quiet apologies through private channels. Mason accepted none of them. He kept the messages anyway. 3 days later, Evelyn returned to the Gilded Heron. The restaurant looked smaller in daylight. Mr. Halbrook nearly dropped the reservation book when she entered. Marcus stared from the service station with his mouth open. The staff went silent in a way she remembered too well. Evelyn wore a dark suit, her mother's necklace hidden beneath the collar and the silver magnolia hairpin in her hair. Mason followed behind her, but only just. She walked to table 9. The same chandelier glowed above it. The same polished glasses waited. The same wine list rested in leather. Evelyn sat. Mason sat across from her. A waiter approached with visible terror. Evelyn looked up gently. "Relax. I know how it feels from your side of the table." The waiter blinked, then nodded. Mason opened the wine list. Chateau Margaux, 2009. Evelyn arched one brow. Still impatient, still correcting me. Someone has to. The waiter looked between them, unsure whether he was allowed to smile. Mason closed the wine list. The 2010, then. Evelyn leaned back as the first soft notes of jazz drifted in from the street. Outside New Orleans moved on bright and hungry, carrying secrets beneath every balcony and prayer beneath every bell. Inside, the woman who had once served powerful men now sat across from one. Not rescued, not owned, remembered. Mason lifted his glass when the wine arrived. To Anna Blake. Evelyn's eyes softened. She lifted hers. To Evelyn Whitmore. Their glasses touched. The sound was small, clean, and final. The dead language had not betrayed her. It had brought her home.